Hey, Dan Passarelli here. One stock that has been on my radar recently is Uber. Uber has been an interesting stock, has been in the news a little bit lately over the past week or so, and it's got some interesting things going on. A few days ago on, I believe it was October 11th, was it October 11th? Yes, October 11th, when Tesla was talking about its robo-taxi, that seemed to give a little bit of a lift to Uber. Pun actually not really intended. Go figure. Big gap up on that day, but it's pulled back since then, and it pulled back a bit today for yet another interesting reason. There's been some chatter about it buying potentially Expedia.com. Although there's a number of analysts who really kind of question that deal and question the timing of it. But let's take a look at the charts of both of those stocks. So this is Uber, and we had an interesting doji today on much higher than average volume. Now this indicates a great deal of indecision. When I see a great deal of indecision, especially if I can get my hands on some cheap volatility, which we'll look at in a minute, that gets me a little bit excited. Now, we had a gap here that hasn't quite gotten filled, and we had a gap here that can be filled, and we have earnings on October 31st. Mamma mia, holy cow. Let's take a look at the volatility. Oh, before we do that, the historical volatility is now sitting at 45, though if we take this one big day out of there, it would be a little bit lower, probably closer to 35. So if we're buying any options after earnings, we're going to have a tough time getting our hands on any really cheap volatility. But that implied volatility will probably ramp up as we go into earnings. So the question becomes, buying the 80 straddle, well, actually we'd probably want to buy a little bit more time. November 8th expiration, buying the 80 straddle for let's just call it $7.75. Is that really what I want to be doing right now? And that answers, well, the answer is maybe, to tell you the truth, right? But I always like to wait. If I were to do that, I'd wait until the very end of the day on Friday, and we're not really quite there yet. There's still this story playing out. Let's look at Expedia. So Expedia got a little giddy going into the session today, except ended up pulling back when some of the analysts started talking about maybe not fancying that deal quite as much as Uber appears to be. So we've got some plays to be watching there. Now, Expedia's earnings, they don't come out until November 7th, so we've got plenty of time there. And, you know, if we're going to look at volatility play, you know, the historical volatility there is 24, including today's big gap, and you really can't get your hands on any cheap volatility there. So these remain to be watched. A lot of times when we see a takeover like this being speculated upon, or, you know, not really announced, but Uber did say that they were potentially interested. Sometimes we see other suitors coming in to bid on it too. So Expedia is going to be a company on my radar for a while. And hey, I hope that helps. This is Dan Passarelli, Trade Smart.